Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we try to, cut through all the noise, the headlines, the endless stream of stuff online. It's a lot.
It really is. It feels like a constant flood sometimes.
Yeah, and making sense of it all. Figuring out what's actually driving things. That's tough. So that's what we're doing today. We're peeling back the layers on some, frankly, surprising political moves, looking at global diplomacy and these ongoing battles over history. Big stuff.
And what's fascinating here, I think, is that it's not just about those individual headlines you see flashing by. We're going to try and connect the dots, show how these seemingly separate things are actually part of bigger patterns shaping American institutions, how we even talk about our own history and America's place in the world.
Exactly. These interconnected patterns. That's the mission today. We've got a stack of articles, research, our notes, and we're going to pull out the most important bits, connect them for you so you get a clearer picture. Hopefully you'll get some of those aha moments, cut through the overload.
Yeah, and the sources we're drawing on cover quite a bit of ground. We'll start with political loyalty versus qualifications. Then we'll get into some tricky diplomatic stuff, debates about historical truth. Also, a look back at the formative years of a key figure and the push for accountability in a pretty major scandal. It all ties together.
Okay, let's dive in.
The character study Billy Long and the unraveling of the IRS.
All right, first up, a story that, well, it sounds almost like satire, but the implications are pretty serious. Billy Long. Now, when you think IRS commissioner, what comes to mind? For me, it's like a super serious tax lawyer.
Decades of experience, CPA, probably a career bureaucrat, stone-faced.
Exactly. Someone steeped in finance, regulations, knows the Treasury inside out. But Billy Long, his main gig, he was an auctioneer.
An auctioneer, yeah. That's the guy appointed to run the IRS, an agency handling trillions of dollars, nearly 80,000 employees. Oh, yeah. It's a contrast.
A huge contrast. He was known for that fast-talking, folksy style at, cattle auctions in Missouri. He used that style pretty effectively to get into Congress, served there for a while.
But the key thing our sources stress is virtually zero experience in tax law, accounting, public finance. None of the usual stuff.
So why? Why him? How does an auctioneer end up running the IRS?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Right. And the reporting points pretty clearly in one direction. Loyalty? It wasn't about his qualifications for that specific job. It was about unwavering loyalty to the president. He was known as a Trump guy through and through, handing out those novelty $45 bills with the president's face.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah, and his Twitter handle, Auctioneer1. He leaned into that persona. Our research strongly suggests that loyalty was the key factor.
Okay, but loyalty aside, was there anything in his background that maybe should have raised red flags before the IRS job?
Well, yeah. According to our sources, quite a big one. He's involved in promoting something later called a fraudulent tribal tax credit scheme.
Fraudulent? Okay. What did that involve?
Basically, the pitch was invest in these tribal credits. Get dollar for dollar back in your taxes. Sounds great, eh?
Too good to be true, maybe.
Exactly. The problem was the credits never existed. They were fake. It even led to a lawsuit from the Cherokee Nation.
Wow. So he was promoting something that turned out to be a complete sham before heading the IRS.
His involvement was promoting it, yeah. Not architecting it, but promoting it. Still, for the guy tapped to lead the nation's tax agency, it's problematic, to say the least. Raises serious questions about judgment.
Okay, so he gets the job, lack of expertise, questionable background. Did the problem start right away?
Pretty much immediately, yeah. Two big things jumped out in our research. First, the expertise gap was a real issue. Running the IRS is incredibly complex. 80,000 people, trillions in revenue, insane legal framework. It needs deep knowledge.
Which he just didn't have.
Right. Our sources say he simply lacked the depth required. You can't really learn that job on the fly.
And the second thing?
A major clash with the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. Okay. Bessent is described in our sources as domineering, wanted total control. And that apparently included micromanaging everything at the IRS.
So Long couldn't actually run the agency.
It seems like he felt incredibly constrained. Our sources mention him saying something like, why was I even asked to do this job if I have to get permission for every single thing?
Yikes. That sounds tense. So what was the breaking point?
The final straw, according to reports, was a really serious request. Homeland Security, backed by Bessent, wanted the IRS to hand over taxpayer info.
Whoa. For what?
For immigration enforcement.
Isn't that information like super protected taxpayer privacy laws?
Exactly. It's incredibly sensitive, legally protected data. This request was seen by many as trying to weaponize the IRS, basically. A huge breach of trust in law.
So what did Long do? He was the loyalist, right?
Surprisingly, no. Despite being a loyalist, on this, he apparently drew a line. He refused.
He said no.
He said no. Cited taxpayer privacy laws. And in that administration, saying no to a direct order like that, especially involving Besant, that was basically signing your own dismissal slip. He was out. Fast.
How fast?
Less than 2 months. Made him the shortest serving IRS commissioner in U.S. history, according to our research.
Whoa. Shortest ever. And even in that short time, he made some waves publicly, right? Some missteps.
Oh, yeah. A couple of notable ones. He's at an auctioneer's conference, his comfort zone, and just casually mentioned tax season might start late.
Oh, boy. That affects a lot of people waiting on refunds.
Huge deal, especially for lower income folks. The IRS had to immediately walk it back, say, nope, not happening. Caused unnecessary panic.
Okay, what else?
Then he falsely announced that the IRS's free direct file program, the one for low-income taxpayers, was going to be scrapped.
Also not true.
Completely untrue. Again, the agency had to jump in, correct the record, calm people down. It just highlighted how out of his depth he seemed to be.
Yeah.
Constant damage control.
So he's out after less than 2 months. What happens next? This is the kicker, right?
Yep. The next appointment. Ambassador to Iceland.
Iceland. From IRS commissioner to ambassador to Iceland.
Sounds weird, but our sources say it's actually a pretty standard Washington move. A consolation prize for loyalists.
A cushy landing spot.
Pretty much. Though the irony noted in some reports is that Iceland is known as a bit of a financial hub, including for tax shelters.
Oh, the irony's thick there. The guy briefly in charge of tax collection sent to a place known for hiding money.
Exactly. Long put out a statement saying he was thrilled to answer the call to service, ready to advance the president's bold agenda in Iceland. Standard stuff, but yeah.
Okay, let's pull back. For you, the listener, what does this whole Billy Long saga mean beyond this sort of dark comedy of it all?
Well, it's not just about one guy being unqualified, right? The bigger story, our sources suggest, is about figures like Scott Besant pushing boundaries, trying to exert total control, demanding private taxpayer data for political ends. That's the real red flag here. It points to this impulse to weaponize institutions.
Institutions that are supposed to be impartial.
Precisely. And the IRS itself. It's already facing challenges. Multiple acting commissioners, shrinking staff, instability.
So putting an unqualified loyalist in charge
creates chaos.
Yeah.
And that chaos can then be exploited by powerful figures trying to bend the institution to their will. It puts the lifeblood of government, as it's sometimes called, at risk. It undermines the whole system.
The ideological battleground history and narrative control.
Okay, let's shift gears now. From political appointments to a different kind of battle, the one over American history itself, specifically the president's recent comments about museums. Our sources note he's been saying they talk too much about the bad things.
And not enough about the good things.
Right. And the really provocative part was suggesting there's too much focus on how bad slavery was.
Yeah, that claim got a lot of attention, and the response from historians we looked at was pretty forceful. Their point, overwhelmingly, is that you actually can't exaggerate how bad slavery was, period.
Impossible to overstate it.
Exactly. We're talking about human beings treated as property, families destroyed, constant violence, abuse, dehumanization for centuries. It wasn't just a bad chapter. It was foundational, brutal, and systemic.
Systemic is the key word there, right? It shaped everything. Economy, politics, identity.
Absolutely. It wasn't isolated incidents. So when historians hear suggestions to tone it down, they see it as trying to rewrite or erase history.
A slippery slope, as some put it.
Yeah. You have to acknowledge the illness, the wound, to even begin healing. Minimizing it prevents that.
But let's push back on that too negative claim. Because if you actually go to these museums, like the Smithsonian ones, that's not the whole story they tell, is it?
Not at all. They absolutely confront the horrors, but they always move beyond that, into resilience, triumph, achievement.
The National Museum of African American History and Culture is a perfect example.
Incredible museum.
It starts with the brutality of slavery, because it has to. That's the origin point. But then you move upwards, literally and figuratively.
Right, through emancipation, Reconstruction, the civil rights struggle.
And then stories of incredible Black excellence. Barack Obama, Maya Angelou, Serena Williams, scientists, artists, entrepreneurs. It shows triumph from oppression.
That's not a downer. That's profoundly inspiring. It shows the strength of the human spirit.
Exactly. So if it's not really about museums being too negative, what's the real motive behind this criticism, according to analysts?
What's fascinating here, the analysis suggests, is that it's less about museums and more about narrative control.
Controlling the story of America.
Precisely. Whoever controls that story influences how people see their country and themselves. If you downplay the painful parts,
You erase certain voices, certain struggles.
and their contributions, and if you erase those struggles, it becomes easier to justify policies today that might harm those same communities.
How so?
Well, think about it. If the narrative becomes slavery wasn't that bad, then maybe systemic racism isn't real either. Maybe inequality is just individual failure.
And if those things aren't seen as real, systemic problems,
Then there's no urgency to fix them. No need for policies aimed at equity or repair. It's a way to shape present-day understanding in politics by reshaping the past.
which underscores just how vital museums are as storytellers.
Absolutely vital. They aren't just buildings with old stuff. They are, as our sources put it, curated narratives.
Telling us who we are and how we got here.
Right, and the people doing that curation, historians, researchers, they spend years ensuring accuracy, finding diverse perspectives, making it meaningful.
And we're talking about major institutions like the Smithsonian, federally funded, trusted for generations,
Yes.
visited by millions.
Millions, families, school kids, tourists from around the world. The story they encounter is layered, complex, human. It's not propaganda.
And the goal isn't to make people feel bad, it's to foster understanding.
Understanding of how far we've come, what people overcame, what was achieved despite the hardships, that actually builds a more informed patriotism, a pride based on truth.
So this debate isn't just academic, is it? It has real implications for all of us listening.
Huge implications. Because this fight isn't just about the past, it's about the future. How we remember history shapes how we act today.
What's the danger of forgetting or minimizing?
The danger is clear. Minimize past injustice, and you make it easier to minimize present injustice. Erase voices from history, and you marginalize people today.
But facing the hard truths, that makes us stronger.
That's the argument. Honesty builds resilience and trust. Like a family dealing with a dark secret, ignoring it festers, but facing it allows for growth.
So connecting this to the bigger picture, the enemy isn't museums talking about slavery.
No. The enemy, if you want to call it that, is forgetting, erasing, rewriting reality to be more comfortable. Slavery was horrific, full stop. But the story of survival, resistance, and how Black Americans reshaped the nation against all odds, that's equally vital. That belongs front and center.
The formative years, New York's crucible. The making of Trump.
Okay, let's shift focus again. We're going back in time now to a very specific place and era. 1980s New York City. Why? Because our sources argue that to really understand the president today, you have to understand the crucible that forged him back then.
It's a fascinating period. New York, after World War II, was, gritty, working class, stable in its own way. Manufacturing, docks.
But then the 70s hit hard, factories closing, the city nearly bankrupt, crime way up. Remember movies like Taxi Driver, The Warrior?
Oh yeah, that gritty, dangerous feel wasn't just Hollywood. It was real.
Then came the 80s, a total reinvention but a very specific kind. Manufacturing out, Wall Street in, finance, media, real estate exploding.
The greed is good era, a whole new kind of flashy wealth.
And right in the middle of it all, building towers and building a persona, was a young Donald J. Trump.
And that environment, 80s New York, was where he learned to master the media. Specifically, the city's crazy tabloid culture.
Page 6 in the New York Post.
Exactly. Rupert Murdoch's Post. Those gossip pages didn't just report on celebrities. They made them. Bankers, developers, even mobsters became public figures.
And Trump jumped right in.
Head first. Our sources describe his first superpower as understanding publicity as power. He'd call gossip columnists directly, feed them stories, stage photo ops, plant rumors about himself.
So this was his real training ground for media manipulation, long before reality TV.
Absolutely. This is where he learned how to command attention, control the narrative, stay in the headlines no matter what.
You mentioned the gods of New York concept. Explain that.
Yeah, some writers call them that. Figures like Trump, Rudy Giuliani, Ed Koch, Al Sharpton, Spike Lee, even John Gotti, the mob boss.
Larger-than-life characters.
Totally. Described as petty, vengeful, larger than life, battling it out publicly. Think about Giuliani as U.S. attorney.
Right, he made big spectacles out of arrests.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Press conferences for every mob indictment. Building his own brand, not just doing the job quietly. Trump was similar. He didn't just want to build buildings, he wanted his name on them in cold letters. He craved the spotlight.
But there was a darker side to this era too, right? Race, crime.
Definitely. Late 80s, the crack epidemic was raging. Racial tensions were sky high. Fear was everywhere.
And that leads into the Central Park 5 case in '89.
A truly tragic, defining moment. A white woman brutally attacked jogging. 5 Black and Latino teenagers arrested almost immediately based on coerced confessions. The tabloids went into a frenzy, demanding revenge.
And Trump got involved how? He wasn't in office.
No, he was a private citizen, a developer.
Yeah.
But he took out full-page ads in major newspapers.
Ads demanding
Demanding the death penalty for those 5 boys.
Wow. As a private citizen.
Yeah. Using his money and media savvy to pour gasoline on the fire, tapping into white fear and anger. Our sources point to this as a chilling preview of tactics he'd use later on a national stage, exploiting division for attention.
And scandal seemed to follow him too, or maybe he courted it.
It certainly seemed like he understood his power in that environment. The whole Studio 54 era, the gossip pages filled with stories of affairs, models.
The Marla Maples affair blew up big time, didn't it? The confrontation on the ski slopes in Aspen?
Oh, yeah. Ivana confronting Marla. It became this huge tabloid circus. Headlines like, "Best sex I ever had," likely planted by Trump himself, according to some reports.
So for him, even bad publicity was good publicity.
That seemed to be the philosophy. Being talked about, even for messy reasons, was better than being ignored. Scandal wasn't a liability, it was fuel. Something to be used, even weaponized, to stay relevant.
Let's talk about the less visible connections, the mob Roy Cohn.
Right. You can't really talk about NYC construction in the 80s without acknowledging the mob's influence. The 5 families had huge sway over unions, contracts, materials.
So building something like Trump Tower.
Likely required, at minimum, their tacit approval or cooperation, according to many sources familiar with the era.
And Roy Cohn was the connection.
Roy Cohn was the connector. Lawyer, fixer, power broker. One of the most feared men in New York. He represented everyone from mobsters to politicians to celebrities.
And he mentored Trump?
Big time. Taught him the dark arts, as it's called. Never admit wrong, always attack, never apologize. Cohn opened doors for Trump to high society, gossip columnists, the underworld.
So Cohn was key to his rise.
Absolutely pivotal, our research suggests. He taught Trump how power worked in that city. Intimidation, manipulation, relationships. He helped the outer borough kid break into Manhattan's inner circles.
And Rupert Murdoch's role ties into this media landscape.
Definitely. Long before Fox News, Murdoch's New York Post was already pioneering that blend of news, gossip, and sensationalism. Trump was perfect fodder for that formula. It was like a testing ground for the kind of media environment we see now.
Okay, so how did this New York figure, often seen as a punchline there, become a national phenomenon? What was the magic trick?
That's the crucial perception gap our sources highlight. New Yorkers, who saw the messy reality daily in the tabloids, often viewed him as brash, maybe a bit of a joke.
But the rest of the country?
They mostly saw the image. The gold towers, the book deals, the idea of success and power. They didn't have the same context.
So that gap allowed him to reinvent himself.
Exactly. To go from being the embodiment of greed and excess in New York to somehow becoming the supposed voice of the working class nationally. A reinvention only possible because most people didn't know the gritty details of his 80s NYC story.
So why does this history lesson matter now in 2025?
Because, as our sources strongly argue, the Trump we see today was fundamentally shaped, forged in that 80s New York fire. His playbook comes directly from that time.
Give me examples.
His rhetoric about crime-ridden cities often echoes 80s NYC anxieties more than current stats. His media strategy attack, create spectacle, learn from the tabloids. His refusal to apologize, his focus on loyalty, that's Roy Cohn 101.
So the takeaway is, you can't understand the present without understanding that specific past.
Pretty much. To grasp his current political style, his instincts, his tactics, you really have to trace it back to his formative years navigating the ruthless, media-saturated world of 1980s New York City.
Current controversies and public perception.
Okay, let's bring it right up to the present now. Starting with some very recent diplomatic news, the president had that long private meeting with Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, hours long, behind closed doors, lots of anticipation about what might come out of it, especially regarding Ukraine.
And what did come out?
A definite pivot, as our sources describe it. The president talked about progress, but the big shift was moving away from pushing for an immediate ceasefire. Instead, he started echoing Russia's position, focusing on negotiating a long-term peace agreement, even while the fighting continues. It was a noticeable adoption of Putin's line.
What are the implications of no ceasefire if the fighting just goes on?
It's grim. The killing continues, cities get bombed, Civilians die, Ukraine gets bled dry, ground down.
Which is exactly what Putin wants.
It's seen as Putin's ideal scenario, yes. Wear Ukraine down, grab land, negotiate from a position of strength later. It benefits Russia enormously.
How did allies react? I saw French President Macron had something to say.
He did. It was described as diplomatic shade. He didn't directly insult the president, but speaking on U.S. TV, he essentially called the idea surrender disguised as a deal.
Strong words.
Very. He stressed that any real peace has to work for Ukraine land back, security guarantees. And crucially, he said, you cannot negotiate peace while bombs are still falling. Meaningful talks can't happen under fire.
Macron also seemed to frame the conflict differently.
Yes, a key difference our sources highlight. The president seems to view it more like a simple border dispute. Macron and most of Europe see it as Putin trying to rebuild an empire, threatening all of European security.
Not just Ukraine, but potentially Poland, the Baltics.
Exactly. It's the whole ballgame for them. Macron even drew that parallel to 1930s appeasement, saying it didn't prevent war, it guaranteed it, implying the president's approach enables Putin.
So where does this leave alliances like NATO?
Well, other leaders, Germany, UK, NATO itself, seem to be holding firm, seeking a real peace, not one that sacrifices Ukraine. It shows a united European front, potentially ready to move forward, even if Washington's stance is different.
Okay, let's switch tracks to a domestic issue. The Jeffrey Epstein files. This seems like a constant battle for transparency.
It really is. The latest flare-up was the White House missing its own deadline to hand over Epstein-related files to Congress. Only by 3 days, but still.
3 days doesn't sound like much, but in this context.
Exactly. Given the sensitivity and the history, any delay immediately fuels suspicion. Representative Robert Garcia, ranking member on oversight, called it a cover-up.
He also criticized releasing files in batches.
Yeah, he called that misleading, arguing it allows the administration to control the narrative, making it hard to see the full picture.
Then there was the deposition of former Attorney General Bill Barr. What came out of that?
Garcia, who was there, said Barr could not clear Trump of wrongdoing. He emphasized Barr didn't say anything to clear the president or slow the investigation.
But Republicans highlighted Barr, saying he never saw evidence that Trump committed a crime.
Right. Garcia calls that creative wording, lawyer speak. It doesn't mean no crime occurred, just that Barr didn't personally see evidence of one. That's why Democrats want the full transcript or video released. Let people judge.
And what about the missing witness? Alex Acosta.
Ah, yes. The former U.S. attorney who gave Epstein that infamous sweetheart deal years ago. Garcia says Acosta knows more than almost anyone.
But he hasn't been subpoenaed by the committee majority.
Correct. Garcia says Republicans haven't called him and Democrats are ready to force a vote to make him testify. They see him as crucial.
Things seem to be escalating. Garcia mentioned Democrats being ready to go nuclear.
Yeah, that implies they're willing to use serious leverage, maybe holding up funding bills, threatening shutdowns to force action on getting these files and testimonies. It shows how high the stakes are perceived to be.
So for the listener, what's the bottom line on this Epstein fight?
It's not just political games. It's about accountability for a really dark, powerful, criminal network with connections across the board. The victims deserve truth. Delays and secrecy just undermine faith in the system's ability to hold powerful people accountable.
Let's touch on a couple of other recent moments, things related to public image, cognitive questions.
Right. There was that moment on Fox News being called the ocean brain freeze.
Tell me about that.
The president seemed to forget the word ocean while talking about foreign policy, stumbled, then said, a big, beautiful ocean. It got a lot of commentary.
Were there other examples?
There was another where he seemed to confuse license plates with driver's licenses when talking about voting. Said something about being asked for his license plate at the voting booth.
Why do these moments matter? Everyone misspeaks sometimes.
True, but our sources note it undercuts the image of strength and control he projects, especially since he often attacks opponents as sleepy or confused. These moments can chip away at his own brand.
Okay, and then there was an economic point involving Home Depot.
Yeah, kind of ironic. Home Depot, a company often linked to the president via a co-founder donor, publicly admitted his tariffs are hurting them.
Hurting how?
Forcing them to raise prices. Their CFO basically said the tariffs are a tax and it's hitting their bottom line, meaning consumers pay more.
And the irony is?
The irony is that Home Depot is huge among the president's own working class base. So a company they frequent is saying his policies are directly costing them money. It potentially contradicts his economic narrative.
So if you pull these threads together, the history comments, The verbal stumbles, the economic blowback.
Mm-hmm.
What's the pattern?
Some analysts are calling it a Trump trifecta. Attempts to reshape the past, signs of confusion in the present, and policies having unintended negative consequences in the real world.
It's not just random incidents, then.
The argument is no, they're not random. They offer a window into how he operates. The attempts to control narratives, the public performance versus occasional reality, the real-world impact of decisions. It gives you the fuller picture, beyond just sound bites, showing how these things affect everyone. Outro.
So that brings us to the end of this deep dive. Wow, we covered a lot of ground.
We really did. From the IRS and loyalty to the battles over history in 1980s New York, global diplomacy with Russia and France, the Epstein files.
It feels like a lot of separate things, but as we've discussed, there are these threads connecting them, aren't there?
Definitely. When you connect it to the bigger picture, you see these consistent patterns. How power is used, how truth gets debated, the impact on institutions, on public trust.
And these aren't just abstract issues. They matter for understanding what's happening right now.
Absolutely. They're vital for making sense of the landscape, for thinking about the future.
Which leads us to maybe one final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. This raises an important question. If these patterns keep showing up, loyalty trumping expertise, history becoming a comfort blanket instead of a lesson, transparency being a constant fight, what does that mean long term?
Yeah, what does it mean for the strength of our institutions, for the integrity of the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, and just our ability to deal with really complex problems here and around the world?
Something to think about. So what does this all mean? We hope this deep dive gave you some tools to keep asking that question, to keep digging deeper yourself. Thanks so much for joining us and engaging with this exploration.